LaAndrea Johnson had always been a name that sparked emotion, sometimes admiration, sometimes controversy, but no one expected what came next. At 42, after years of staying silent and keeping her head down through wave after wave of judgment, she finally decided she had enough. And when she spoke, she didn't hold anything back. You won't believe the way things unfolded. Let me tell you, this wasn't just another online spat or industry drama. This time, destiny took an unexpected turn. It all began with one sentence that echoed across pulpits, social media, and living rooms. Please stop preaching. These words weren't whispered or said in private. They were spoken loud and clear by none other than Keion Henderson, a respected and rising pastor. The gospel community froze. How could one preacher, known for his cool composure and rising influence, say something so direct, so heavy, and so personal about another believer? And why LaAndrea? This is where it gets interesting. LaAndrea Johnson wasn't new to controversy. She had lived through it all: alcohol addiction, public struggles, painful truths, and yet she kept showing up, preaching, singing, sharing. She didn't preach perfection. She preached truth. She preached from the scars, not just the scripture. That's what made her real. That's what made people love her. And that maybe is exactly what made her a threat to someone like Keion Henderson, who had built a spotless image, shiny suits, polished sermons, Instagram perfect success. But here's the shocking part. The moment Keion made that statement, the gospel world wasn't just confused, it was split. Some people thought he was trying to help her. Others believed he was tearing down a fellow minister out of pride or fear. But what made this story different? It wasn't just the clash of two personalities. It was the clash of two belief systems. Keion represented the polished, perfect image of ministry: order, success, respectability. LaAndrea represented something raw, something broken but beautiful. Ministry from the mess. People started digging. Was there a history between them? Was this personal? Or had LaAndrea's unapologetic approach to preaching finally become too uncomfortable for the neat, organized world that Keion was trying to build? Whispers started floating. Maybe she had said something in a sermon. Maybe she had challenged a norm too boldly, but no one really knew until she responded. And the craziest part, she didn't just respond with words. She responded with fire. I won't stay silent. I can't stay silent. That's what she said. And suddenly, this wasn't about a personal jab anymore. This was about every person who had ever been told to tone it down, clean it up, and act holy enough to be accepted. LaAndrea's message was louder than Keion's insult. She was defending every voice that had ever been shut down by judgment dressed up as religion. Now, here's where things took a deeper turn. She didn't just say she wouldn't stop preaching. She explained why. Her ministry wasn't for show. It was her way of healing, of surviving. She wasn't looking for applause. She was looking to reach people who had hit rock bottom like she once had. She didn't want to stand above people. She wanted to stand with them. And that kind of message, it was powerful, too powerful to ignore. But remember, only the beginning has unfolded. The real twist is yet to come. The tension was rising and the gospel community was just starting to take sides. Keion stayed silent, but the world around them didn't. Supporters of both leaders were about to turn this clash into a storm that no one could stop. After LaAndrea's bold clapback, social media exploded. Hashtags started trending. Church folks, gospel lovers, even people who didn't normally follow this kind of drama were now glued to every word. Some were cheering her on, saying, finally, someone had the courage to stand up against the quiet control that had kept people in check for years. Others, not so supportive, they accused her of causing division, of disrespecting a man of God. But here's the thing. This wasn't just about two people anymore. This had become a mirror, and everyone was forced to look at themselves. This is where it gets interesting. People started asking the uncomfortable questions. Why was the church so uncomfortable with transparency? Why did pastors have to be perfect to be respected? And who got to decide what acceptable ministry looked like? For a long time, the church had one image of a preacher, clean cut, composed, always in control. But Leandria was none of that. She was loud, she was flawed, she was open, and somehow that made her more relatable than ever. But here's the shocking part. As the support for Leandria grew louder, so did the backlash. Some well-known voices in the gospel scene began speaking up, without naming names, of course. But the shade was heavy. One popular pastor even said during a live stream, "Not everyone is called to preach just because they have a story." People knew exactly who he meant. The tension wasn't subtle anymore. It was public, it was messy, and it was turning into something bigger than either of them could have predicted. Keion Henderson, on the other hand, stayed quiet. Not a tweet, not a post, nothing. His silence became its own headline. People started interpreting it in different ways. Some said it was strength, others said it was guilt. But silence in this situation didn't feel neutral. It felt like fuel to the fire. Every hour he didn't respond, people created their own narratives. And some of those stories, not so flattering. What makes this story different is that both sides had receipts. People started posting old clips of Leandria preaching, crying, being real, connecting in a way that felt like ministry in its rawest form. Then others posted Keion's sleek sermons, his tailored suits, his business deals, even his celebrity wedding. The comparison was brutal, but it revealed something deeper. Two completely different kinds of faith leadership. One messy and human, the other polished and untouchable. And then, just when you thought the fire was starting to cool down, Leandria gave another interview. This time, she didn't just defend herself, she challenged the system. She said something that made headlines everywhere. The church is scared of real people. Boom. That sentence hit like a lightning bolt. She wasn't talking about Keion anymore. She was talking about an entire institution. She said people were hurting in silence because they felt like they had to hide their flaws just to be accepted. She wasn't just standing up for herself. She was fighting for the broken, the addicted, the ashamed. And that's when her words went from controversial to revolutionary. But destiny took another unexpected turn. Rumors started swirling that some church leaders were having private meetings about her. Some said she was being blacklisted from gospel events. Others claimed her upcoming performances were being quietly canceled. If it was true, it meant her truth-telling had come at a cost, and that cost was her platform. But Leandria, she didn't flinch. She posted a message that said, "God gave me this voice, no man can take it away." And now the gospel world was on edge. Was this the beginning of a new era in ministry? Or was Leandria about to be silenced again, this time not by words, but by actions? After Leandria's fiery statement about the church being afraid of real people, things didn't just get tense, they got dangerous. Whispers turned into warnings. People close to her began sharing that she was receiving anonymous messages, cautioning her to stop talking. It wasn't just about public image anymore. There was now a real sense of fear. But Leandria, she didn't back down, she doubled down. She went live one night, no glam, no filters, just her and her truth. And in that live, she said something that would shake the gospel world once again. If they can't handle my truth, they were never ready for God's grace. This was where the controversy turned into a movement. Thousands of viewers flooded the live with messages of support. People started sharing their own stories, addiction, shame, struggles they were hiding just to be accepted in their churches. Leandria had opened the floodgates, and now people were really talking. But while her fan base grew, so did the pushback from church leadership. Several influential pastors began speaking in code from their pulpits. warning against rebellion disguised as revelation. It didn't take a genius to figure out who they were talking about. Conferences she was once invited to quietly removed her name from the flyers. Some gospel radio stations even stopped playing her songs. But here's the craziest part. While they were trying to shut her down, her message kept spreading even faster. Videos of her preaching, crying, testifying, all of it started going viral. People who had never heard of her before were now calling her the voice of a new generation of faith. This is where it gets even more twisted. While the church was trying to hold its ground, cracks began to show in the other camp too. People started digging into Keion Henderson's past. Old interviews surfaced. Comments he had made about ministry, money, and image were now being used against him. Screenshots of past partnerships, photos with celebrities, and even rumors about church money being used for lifestyle choices all started surfacing. Suddenly, the man who once seemed untouchable was under the microscope. And just when it looked like he might finally speak out, he posted a cryptic message. Some storms you don't calm, you just outlast. That line sent social media into a frenzy. Was he admitting guilt? Was he brushing it off? Or was it a subtle warning that he wasn't going anywhere? Nobody knew for sure, but one thing was clear. The war had gone from silent to strategic. And let's not forget, behind all this drama was a deeper issue. People weren't just choosing between Leandria and Keion. They were choosing between two kinds of faith. One where you cover your scars and play the role. The other where you lead with your wounds and dare to say, I'm still called. This wasn't just gossip, it was a reckoning. What makes this story so different is that it forced the gospel world to look at itself and ask, have we been getting it wrong? Has the church placed image above impact? And in our rush to protect titles and platforms, did we forget the power of truth? Now, the final piece of the story was just around the corner. People were holding their breath, wondering who would speak next and what it would cost. After weeks of silence, rumors, and rising pressure, something unexpected happened. Destiny took an unexpected turn. Keion Henderson finally broke his silence, but not in a sermon, not in an official church statement, and not on his massive Instagram following. He appeared in a quiet, sit-down interview on a podcast no one expected him to even acknowledge. And from the first minute, it was clear. This wasn't the polished pastor people were used to. His tone was calm, but his words, they carried weight. He didn't call Leandria by name, not once, but everyone knew who he was talking about. He said, leadership requires accountability, but it also requires wisdom. Sometimes what you don't say protects more than what you do. That sentence alone divided the internet. Some called it classy, others said it was a cop-out, but here's the shocking part. He didn't deny it. He didn't walk back his please stop preaching comment. Instead, he doubled down, saying the pulpit was sacred space and that transparency without discipline becomes chaos. That was it. No apology, no softening. And just like that, the fire reignited. Leandria's fans didn't hold back. Hashtags like #LetHerPreach and #RealFaith still matters trended overnight. And within 24 hours, she responded again, but not through an angry rant or a live video. This time she did it the way she knew best, through music. She released a surprise single, raw, stripped down, just her voice and a piano. The lyrics, they were basically a letter, a cry, a declaration. She sang, I ain't perfect, but I'm called. I ain't polished, but I'm chosen. I ain't quiet, but I'm heard. People said it was the most emotional track she had ever released. And whether it was intentional or not, it became the anthem for everyone who felt like they didn't fit the mold but still belonged. Suddenly, pastors who once distanced themselves from her started to soften. A few even invited her to speak again, publicly. Her tour bookings doubled. Interviews started lining up. The very doors that were slammed shut weeks ago, now wide open. It was as if the controversy didn't break her, it built her. But here's where it got really deep. Some members inside Henderson's own church started to speak up. Quietly at first, but then more boldly. A few longtime members left, saying the ministry no longer reflected the heart it once had. Others claimed they felt more churched than changed. Internal shifts began. People started questioning whether influence had replaced intimacy with God. The debate that started with two people had now become a full-on church crisis. And then came the final twist. An anonymous insider leaked a private board meeting recording, one where leaders were discussing how to manage the LaAndrea situation and control the narrative. That leak was the final straw. People began to realize this wasn't about theology, it was about control. And in trying to silence LaAndrea, they had actually given her the biggest microphone of her life. So where did this leave everything? It left the gospel world forever changed. What started as one statement, please stop preaching, became a national conversation about authenticity, control, tradition, and the future of ministry. LaAndrea stood her ground, not because she was flawless, but because she was real. And that realness exposed a system that was more interested in image than impact. Keion Henderson, he didn't disappear. His followers still supported him, and his ministry continued. But the perception, it shifted. He was no longer just a voice. He was part of a much bigger question. Can you lead without listening? In the end, it wasn't just about who was right or wrong. It was about something deeper. What kind of church do we want? One that demands mass or one that allows healing? This wasn't just controversy. This was a turning point. And whether people agreed with LaAndrea or not, one thing was clear. She made the world listen.